President Biden more than happy to spread fake news to smear Border Patrol agents as he desperately looks to shift the blame on the crisis he created. Biden peddling the false narrative that Border Patrol agents were whipping migrants, even though it's been repeatedly disproven.
Of course, I take responsibility. I'm president, but it was horrible what to see, as you saw. To see people treated like they did, horses barely running them over, people being strapped, it's outrageous. I promise you, those people will pay. They will be, there's an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences. There will be consequences. It's an embarrassment, but it's beyond an embarrassment. It's dangerous. It's wrong. It sends the wrong message around the world. It sends the wrong message at home. It's simply not who we are.
And Biden's DHS chief adding to the evidence-free pile-on.
We, our entire nation, saw horrifying images that do not reflect who we are, who we aspire to be, or the integrity and values of our truly heroic personnel in the Department of Homeland Security. We know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism.
Biden, that guy Mayorkas, and other Democrats are basing those smears not on evidence or eyewitness accounts, but on a couple of photos. And guess what? The photographer who took them is saying the entire so-called controversy did not happen. Quote, "I've never seen them whip anyone." He was swinging it, but it can be misconstrued when you're looking at the picture. Greg, your thoughts?
Well, you know, I always laughed at Trump derangement syndrome, and I swear I would never get Biden derangement syndrome because it's an emotional state. So I'm going to remain completely unemotional about this. He is absolutely despicable. Joe Biden is despicable. Mayorkas is a ghoulish freak. They are disgusting. They've become vehicles for hate and disunity by pointing fingers at people who are just trying to do their jobs. I promise you, these people will pay. These people are not only innocent and being subjected to a witch hunt created by the media and the Democrats, they're doing their job protecting the border because this mindless invalid that we call a president isn't doing his job. It is instead in control of the people that helped him get elected. In any conflict that we have seen so far, Joe has never sided with the American citizen, and especially Americans in law enforcement. Instead, he embraces left-wing myths based on debunked stuff like this. Remember the Fine People hoax? This is actually worse than the Fine People hoax. We nailed it before when he is a shell of himself, and he's operated by the far left in his party. He droned 7 children and 3 other people out of his sheer incompetence, and he is publicly more troubled by this image that shows nobody being harmed. This one image of a Border Patrol officer who hasn't hurt anybody, and some of these officers have actually saved lives. He cares more about this image than those dead people in Afghanistan. He should be on desk duty. He should be in bed duty for the remainder of his term. Everybody knows this is false. They know it's false. But they've run to the idea of race as a way to distract from their ultimate failures. And they're throwing Americans under the bus. You can't stand for this.
Sandra, to Greg's point, he is now, the president said harsher things about our Border Patrol agents than he has said about the drug cartels.
These Border Patrol agents are stunned. They're angered by this. We've had them on the Fox News channel. One said, would you go to work and do your best at your job, knowing that your boss is going to tell you that you're going to have to pay without an investigation? Those comments between what President Biden said this morning, as far as these people will pay, and Mayorkas this afternoon, hours apart, then saying the investigation into what occurred has not yet concluded. Brandon Judd was on my program today, head of National Border Patrol Council, asked very clearly, how can there be a fair investigation now that President Biden has weighed in the way he has? It's a fair question and one that was pressed to the White House this afternoon. What stands out to me, though, is the flip from Mayorkas. Go back to his initial response, that these are images where nothing can be concluded other than they were employing the policy they've been trained to at the border. He saw the public outrage. He came back, showed that he was outraged at those images. That's a real problem. And I don't know how the White House is going to defend this, especially now that there is going to be an investigation.
And they run with these hoaxes, Katie, because they're cocky, and these hoaxes have worked before. Trump-Russia collusion, I could name thousands of hoaxes that they push, but this one's different because this one is so egregiously fixed that everybody with a brain can see that it's not true, yet they 4 days later, after this has been debunked by everybody, still push it. What does that tell you?
That they're using this as a way to distract from their own failures, and they need another issue and they need a scapegoat, which is exactly what they're doing with these Border Patrol agents. It is absolutely disgusting that the President of the United States would come out today and not only say that people are going to be punished when there hasn't been a thorough investigation, unless you can watch this video and see exactly what happened and know that there is no need for an investigation, that the investigation itself is a punishment and a way to deepen the morale in a negative way at the border. And if you look at what the questions were today at the White House, Mayorkas has no plans to prevent this from happening. The administration has no plans to keep thousands of more people from coming to the border and camping under a bridge in 100-degree weather. The media didn't care about this issue for months until they could use agents and law enforcement for a racial agenda. And when the photographer says, well, the photos can be misconstrued, with all due respect to him, they're only misconstrued if you're looking for a problem, if you're looking for something to distract away from spending $3.5 trillion, distracting from hundreds of Americans and green card holders who are stranded behind enemy lines in Taliban territory right now. And for them to go after regular, everyday people like the Border Patrol and paint them as inhumane when they've dedicated their lives and go out every single day, not to just protect Americans, but to rescue illegal immigrants who are breaking our laws, is the first thing they do in this country, is disgusting.
So, Jessica, why do they act like there was whipping when there was clearly no whipping?
I don't know. I would have gone with the investigation. We'll take us where it needs to go, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about what's going on at the border. If I was Secretary Mayorkas this afternoon, I think there's actually been a little bit of progress. So everyone has been cleared from under the bridge. That happened pretty quickly, considering that there were thousands of people there. And I will admit, and I don't think that I'm a Trump derangement syndrome sufferer. When I first saw the images, and this might just be from being someone who doesn't hang out on Border Patrol a lot, I thought, like, this looks really weird to me. Like, I didn't know that there would be, I knew there were people on horseback, didn't know necessarily that they would have reins with them, and I thought, what's going on here? And I do wish that the photographer...
Well, reins are usually used when you're on horseback.
That's what she's saying she wasn't aware
You
of.
didn't know that? How did I know that and you didn't?
But doesn't that go to Biden's point that he's never been to the border and he has no plans to visit?
You grew up in Long Island. You're kind of on the rough side of things.
I didn't want to say that, but it's a little true. I'm trying to explain that I can see why a lot of people were like, what is going on here? And there was also
What about the 15,000 people under the bridge? What about that didn't look odd? Or why don't they want
it looked odd. We've been
questions
talking about
answered
it
on
all week. And liberals have been talking about it all week. And you can see in the polling on this that everybody on both sides of the aisle is saying that, like, what is going on under the bridge and at the border there?
I think it's important to point out that the administration is taking this line of the nation was horrified by the view of these images. Actually, I think there's a lot of people in this country, and more than 50%, who saw those images and said, wow, thank you, Border Patrol, for doing your job against people who are blatantly violating our sovereignty. I think they've got this wrong. You have to remember that Trump won a lot of the counties on the border, and it's not the same demographic that Democrats think that it is.
But when Biden was saying that and Mayorkas was saying that, they weren't really talking to the wide swath of Americans.
Well,
they were
that's
talking
probably
to
the
their
problem, right?
voters,
So
and the
their
majority of them who voted, supported.
So if he won the election, then the wide swath of Americans should be their voters. So you're saying all their voters are that dumb?
No,
they don't realize that no one was whipped?
Only about
talking to each other.
155 million people voted. There are 330 million people roughly in the country. So my numbers add up and yours don't.
Right, so I'll do the math. Everybody that watches it knows it's a lie. Case closed.